Hello and welcome to Forward, Mississippi State University's television show exclusively for the College of Education. I'm Camille Carskadden, the communications specialist for the college, and today on the show we have Dr. John Eric Smith, who is an associate professor of kinesiology. Welcome.
Hi.
I'm so glad that you were able to make it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So how about we begin just by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, as you said, my name is John Eric Smith. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Kinesiology. I came here after spending 9 years in industry working for the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, where I did research related to product development as well as providing service and guidance to athletes. I went to Gatorade coming from Auburn University, where I studied exercise science and worked mostly in the thermal lab doing research on thermal regulation and infrared thermography.
Interesting. So what made you make the switch from Gatorade into academia?
So my last role at Gatorade, I was the director of a research facility, and I was helping develop some of the younger scientists. And one of the things I discovered in that process is a passion I have for developing younger scientists and seeing them grow in our field. And one of the opportunities I saw in academia was to develop younger scientists and bring them to the point that they're actually some of the leaders in our field.
All right, and you mentioned a little bit about your research at Gatorade, but what kind of research do you do for the Department of Kinesiology?
So yes, when I got to Gatorade, there were already several people doing the thermoregulatory research. One of the areas I picked up in my time there was related to sports nutrition and specifically how the body uses carbohydrates as a fuel source. As I came to Mississippi State, I brought along with me the research in sports nutrition, as well as staying with the idea of looking at human performance. One of my big interests is looking at what are the capabilities of the human body. And I think one of the best populations to look at that and to study what are the human body's limits are looking at elite athletes. So a lot of my research focuses on making the top athletes just that little bit better to see how much more the human body can do.
And why did you choose this research area?
So I think my entire life has been very focused around sports. My parents say that my first word was ball, and sports have been a big part of my life. As I got into college, I started out in chemical engineering. And as I discovered there was a field to study exercise, I brought my interest in chemistry and my interest in sports together to look at how the body's performing and what are some of the metabolic aspects that are going to be impacting exercise performance and human performance.
Good. And what sort of research projects do y'all currently have going on right now?
So I'm really excited. I have 3 doctoral students right now active, and each of them have their own projects. So we have 4 either currently running or getting ready to start up. One of the ones we're looking at goes back to my thermoregulatory roots, and we're looking at how sweat rate varies in athletes as they train during different parts of the year and on week-to-week basis. If we can understand what their sweat rate is, we can have a better understanding of how we can properly hydrate them to make sure they're not losing too much fluid during exercise. A second project we're doing, one of my doctoral students has just completed the data collection looking at the nutrient intake of female athletes through the competitive season. She was looking at collegiate athletes, so a top-level athlete, and seeing how their nutrient needs are going to differ through different parts of the season, whether they're off-season, whether they're in-season and having higher caloric needs. How are they at meeting those needs, and is it sufficient? A second study that we're in the middle of is we're looking at some of the sports wearable technology and seeing how the body can be assessed with some of the new electronic technology coming out so that we can better understand fatigue and better prepare our athletes for next performances and better enhance their recovery. I think the study that we're getting ready to kick off that I'm excited about is one of my doctoral students has applied for a grant that it seems like everything is looking positive for us getting the funding to look at how sweet potato ingestion can affect the gut bacteria with the idea that if we can feed the positive bacteria, we may be able to enhance good bacteria in the gut and then better be able to utilize the carbohydrates we ingest during exercise, thereby enhancing performance of our athletes.
Wonderful. And can you elaborate on the sweet potato research a little bit more?
Yeah. So in my dissertation work, we did research looking at how carbohydrate affects exercise performance in athletes. And one of the things that we found were that when we feed athletes carbohydrate, the general rule is that carbohydrates improve performance. But there were subgroups in the athletes where some athletes saw an improvement in performance when ingesting carbohydrate during exercise, and then other athletes it didn't seem to make a difference. As we've continued to look at this question, we can't really identify why we have these responders and these non-responders. One of the ideas we have is that it may be related to the gut microbiome. And if we can enhance the microbiome with different prebiotics, and we can potentially look at being better able to use those carbohydrates that we're ingesting. And hopefully, if we can do that, we can improve performance. I think if this works, it could really show to athletes that a sweet potato could be an athletic type food.
And so why is this project important?
I think from our perspective, again, we're looking at trying to maximize the capability of the human body. If we look at athletes, everyone talks about running a marathon and hitting a wall. When you hit a wall in a marathon, it's because you've ran out of this endogenous sources of carbohydrate. So one of the things that we know work is feeding people carbohydrate to allow them to sustain exercise. And if we can find a way to help these non-responders begin to respond to this carbohydrate ingestion, it's going to be a very big tool for athletes, and it's going to be a lot of interest from the athletic community.
Wonderful. So you've clearly had a really, really great career, but what are you most proud of in your career?
I think the thing that is truly my biggest pride is seeing the people, the younger scientists that have trained under me, be successful. If I look at the students I've had since arriving at Mississippi State, the first master's student that worked with me, she left here to go work on a PhD at University of Alabama, but also during that time she was hired on the sports nutrition staff at Alabama. Several of my graduate students have gone on to work at the Gatorade Sports Science Institute as consultants, where they travel around the country and they're able to test athletes at professional teams, other collegiate teams, provide them recommendations on fluid needs, provide them recommendations on nutrient needs. And then the doctoral students that have finished our program so far have all landed the jobs they came into our program saying that they wanted at the schools or in the systems that they had targeted at entry. So I'm really excited that some of my experience are being translated to the students coming out of my program.
That's fantastic. So kinesiology is the biggest major here on campus. So what else is going on in that department?
So as you said, we're the biggest department on campus. It's an exciting place to be, to see all the students coming through our program, to look at their goals and their outcomes of where they want to be. I think the recent things we have going on, one of the big ones is we were just approved to have the sports studies concentration in our department. It was just approved to start the Research Institute of Sports Convergence. And this is a program that's looking at multidisciplinary groups and trying to use sports as a way to connect people, empower people, social change, and inspire them to contribute to sports and health and helping build a sustainable community. We also have coming up in September, we're hosting the National Strength and Conditioning Association State Clinic on September 19th. We've been hosting it for a couple years in person. This is going to be the first year that we're doing an online event. So we're really looking forward to that event as it draws attention to our program and to our university. I think probably the biggest news in our department is we're currently planning a new building for the Department of Kinesiology. We're all really excited about that, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition pretty soon.
Wonderful. And what about your fellow faculty members? What research are they doing right now?
So, as you said, we're the largest department on campus, so trying to get through everybody, I think there's just not time in the day. But to highlight a couple, we have Dr. Megan Holmes is helping with the physical activity arm of Aim for Change, which is advancing, inspiring, motivating for community health and extension, or through extension. And one of the things Dr. Holmes is doing with her students is they're doing environmental evaluations of the neighborhoods within different Mississippi counties, specifically those that have the highest rates of obesity, and finding ways to make those spaces more walkable and improve the spaces people there can have to exercise and just do different forms of physical activity to improve health. Our neuromechanics group, this is with Dr. Adam Knight and Dr. Harish Chander. They're working on developing sensors that can help capture the movements around the ankle in real world environments so that we can then take these findings and look at how we can better improve or reduce the risk of injuries related to movement. They're also working on a proposal right now to take virtual reality into these settings. And with virtual reality, they can train workers that may have to work at varying heights and all that to find out if people have aversion to height before they're ever put into the setting where there may be increased risk. I think one of the big studies coming from our department is out of our disability studies group with Stamatis Vlasidis. He's got a grant where they're looking at developing population-specific algorithms to measure the physical activity and sedentary behaviors with different type of accelerometers in adults with Down syndrome. I think that's a really exciting work to keep an eye on.
Wonderful. And if someone wanted more information about the department, specifically their majors, where would they need to go?
So I think if you look at the majors in kinesiology, the outcomes are so variable that I think coming over here, talking to some of the people in our main office and being directed to the faculty members with the experiences in the different arms of kinesiology can provide better guidance. I know I have strong backgrounds in sports nutrition and industry research and strength and conditioning, but then several of our faculty members also have experience with physical therapy, athletic training. Dr. John Lamberth is really big in promoting people to go to professional schools such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, looking at the medical schools, the nursing schools, and using kinesiology as a path to those careers.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have, but thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. For more information about the College of Education, visit educ.msstate.edu.